got some pretty big MMA news just around the whole, I guess, circuit, not just the UFC. I mean, it started off really in the beginning of like last week with the Francis Ngannou Tyson Fury fight. I know I made the video on the channel by myself like earlier in the week, but if you want to like say what you think about that real quick, I mean, I'll leave the floor to you because this pod isn't going to be as crazy about just one particular thing. We're probably going to go around MMA a little bit, so just stick with us. We'll definitely put some timestamps in though for the people who need them. But
Well,
floor is
yeah,
yours.
I mean, anyways, like, it's great, and like I want to, as great as you would think, like, the entire MMA fan base would like be happy for this one way or another, like, to see um our guy pretty much prevail in the end and get the bag that everyone thought he was fumbling. So, um, but like also at the same time, like I don't, I'm seeing like it's just always like mixed emotions. I feel like when I see from like the public with things like these. I don't know if it's just to stir controversy or just like conversation, but like some people just can't like be happy for the guy. They always just gotta like you know find like goalposts to move and
Well,
stuff.
they just don't want to admit they're wrong. That's
Yeah.
like, and I don't. I think I even said it in the video that because if you remember a while back, I was talking about this Francis Ngannou stuff when he was like first a free agent, and it seemed like the boxing opportunities weren't really there at that point. And I was like, I don't know if this was a good decision. And then he obviously signed with the PFL, and this fight with Fury
Yeah.
is happening now. So, I mean, I'm man enough to admit when I'm wrong. I was wrong about this one. So good on Francis. I'm definitely happy for him.
For for me, like I think there's more to say about Tyson Fury than there is Francis Ngannou, honestly, and what like where Tyson Fury's legacy stands right now. Because like this dude is still holding like belts, and he's like not defending them. He's taking the big marquee fights like this. Whether or not it's an easy matchup, easy W for him, like you know, Tyson Fury has been in a weird state lately, and I don't really know what this fight's gonna do for him. If honest, I honestly think it hurts him. Like, obviously, if he were to lose, like,
That would be pretty bad.
it'll put a stain for sure. Um,
Yeah, I think there's
on
a
his career.
rematch clause too. I'm pretty sure Francis just said that today. I think
Oh well,
so. That
yeah,
there is
man.
that, but I kind of I don't know. I don't really blame him for the fact that it's not for the belt, just because I don't think that's even in his control. Like it's gonna go on their pro records, but
Yeah, I was saying, the talk about whether or not it's gonna be an exhibition or not
yeah, I don't
for
believe
him.
it is. That's I mean they've all the press releases and things that I've heard about it. It's a legit fight. They're getting in the ring and they're going at it. It's the only thing that's different is that they're not fighting for Fury's belts because Ngannou's just he's not like a ranked
Yeah.
WBC contender, and that's why like
But jeez,
I don't
man,
know.
like how about that for your boxing debut? Freaking Tyson Fury, holy shit.
Dude, he literally could have started off against like anybody, and he actually just
The
had. He's
baddest,
fighting
the
the best
baddest,
guy.
the baddest man on the planet.
It's crazy.
Still.
In a way, I mean, I do give Tyson credit for taking the fight just because, like, they're really, like you were kind of saying, there's no real reward for him, but there's so much risk. And,
Yeah.
like, if he gets dropped by Francis Ngannou, that's incredible. Like, that would
Yeah,
be
you get
insane.
I can already see this shot now, honestly, of Francis recording a knockdown and Tyson just like being bewildered,
Like the
staring up at
first
him
Wilder
like, "Oh
fight.
shit, like I better stop playing with my food." But nah, man, like yeah, his debut, his boxing debut or not, like you know, Francis Ngannou to this day, like is not the first guy you want to really throw hands with, but you could say the same thing for Tyson Fury. So I'm excited. That's all I know. So
Yeah, I mean, I'd be pretty happy in my life if I don't have to cross paths in the ring or the octagon with either of
yeah,
these two
same.
guys. So I think with that, I'll probably just move on to the next topic. I wanted to just give you like a bit to like say what you thought of it since people only kind of heard what I was saying on that last video. But
Yeah.
the next bit of news that we wanted to cover is Jamahal Hill vacating the UFC light heavyweight title after he ruptured his Achilles. That's huge news, not only I think for the UFC but for the sport. And we were talking about this a little bit before we started, but right now it seems like there actually might be a real debate if the UFC has the best 205er on the planet because without Prohaska, without Jamal Hill, you have this huge scramble for a title. There's so many people who could fight for it. You got Jan, Pereira, I'm blanking, Ankalaev, and like the light heavyweight division, it's filled with like young up and coming talent too. And like we were talking about Johnny Walker even like a few weeks ago, or probably a few months ago at this point. I just my
I mean,
personal yeah,
yeah,
you want to go first.
yeah. It's just something like just very simple. Honestly, that's why I want to just chime in for a sec. But
Sure.
it's really just like no one can, keep the belt seemingly
Yeah.
like for a significant amount of time.
Really
Like,
just tells you how great John Jones was for such a long
Yeah.
time, beating all those people that he beat, and like now
yeah,
it's like
dude.
hot potato with the
Isn't
belt.
then like now that his presence isn't there anymore, it's like left this division in like such flux. And like obviously it's Yuri Prohaska's injury and now Jamahal Hill's injury is just straight up bad luck. But like
You still have to have the conversation. Like
yeah,
one of the things we talked about before the show was Vadim Nemkov and Bellator. It's like, when do we start giving this dude credit for being either one of the best or the best 205er on the planet? Like, there's no UFC light heavyweight champion right now. There's just not. Like, the two guys who you could argue are better, really, like, they're just not there right now. And, you could talk about Ankalaev and Jan, but personally, I mean, I've been saying this on this pod for a while. Vadim Nemkov is arguably the best. I don't know if he is. I would love to see him fight like some of the best fighters in the UFC, because I think he would do pretty well, even if he wouldn't win the belt. But he's got wins over Yoel Romero, Corey Anderson, Phil Davis, Ryan Bader. Like, those aren't nobodies. You know what I mean? Those are guys who are at the top in their runs in the UFC. And he's
I
just
mean,
been
yeah,
running
like a
over
guy
people.
Ryan Bader, who you could argue is the the best middleweight even. So
You mean like light heavyweight?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, dude, it's just I think it's some of it is just wanting to maybe not to cater to the UFC, but people still have that opinion, and it's right for the most part, that the UFC has the best fighters in every division. But right now at light heavyweight, with the title being in flux constantly, like you just said, and then you got a guy in Bellator like Nemkov who's just running people over, and doesn't seem to really be slowing down. You have to at least bring it up. That's kind of my view of it. I think the fact that people don't bring it up is almost criminal. But I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that Vadim Nemkov or am I tripping about him, or do you think that he could be one of the best?
Definitely not. It's just it's just really a promotion thing at the end of the day. Like where Bellator just kind of just is what it is at this point. So, I don't think really any of these guys, unless especially when you're especially when you're a foreigner like Nadim Nemko. So it's tough to you gotta really like know how to like brain yourself and stuff, and yeah, like you could be just like it doesn't take much to turn on a fight of his and know like, yeah, this guy's dangerous. But yeah, that's the thing. It's not enough people are watching. So
Yeah, well, and this brings up a good point like that we were going to get to anyway. Just with Bellator right now, they're shopping the company pretty much. So, excuse me, but there's like a lot of talk of whether it could be the PFL that could acquire them. There's been some sources that have like shot that down, and then there's other sources that say that is still possible. We won't know until something happens, obviously. But one thing about the PFL is obviously they're making a lot of moves lately with Ngannou, and now they have this thing with Tyson Fury that I don't know if I would imagine they're somewhat involved, because it's like gimmick fight promotion, so it's like Francis's thing. But I would imagine that the PFL has to get something out of that. There's no way they would just let him box. But I don't know, maybe I have to do a little more research into that. But anyway, that's not my main point. But the PFL is making all these things happen. Randy Couture a few months ago was talking about meeting with like the royal families in like Saudi Arabia. So like they're actively trying to make more money themselves, which makes me think that they're trying to do something big. And is that thing purchasing Bellator? I don't really know. But I think no matter who ends up getting Bellator, I think that they're going to be in a good spot, and I think that they're going to be like in control of their own
Yeah.
destiny. Because at the end of the day, they have the fighters. It's just the marketing sometimes that really just it's mind-boggling at times with some of the people on their roster. But I don't know. Do you think that if the PFL and Bellator were to actually merge, do you think that that could really rival the UFC at this point?
Oh, yeah, at this point, like, definitely. You know, on the topic of there not even being, you know, we don't even know if UFC has, you know, for each champion that, you know, that they have a division, like, now we have one that is legit in question. Like, we have no idea who the best is. So that's like you know, that could be like the early signs of like a sea change in a way.
See, I feel
That
so good though, because like for the past few years, it really just has been the UFC versus nobody. But it seems like lately now we're starting to
and
hear
once
about different
again,
people.
like,
Same
yeah,
with Francis too at heavyweight. Like, because I know you're talking about light heavyweight, but even heavyweight right now, Francis left. He was still the champion. Like, you know what I mean? He never lost that belt in the cage. And you know, you could think that John Jones was going to beat him up. That's perfectly reasonable, but it's still a debate. Like, we didn't see
yeah,
that fight. And same thing with light heavyweight, in my opinion. You know, until we get any actual clarity on that, which I don't think we ever will, because the UFC is not a cross promotion type company. I think we're going to be debating it for a while, but I'm happy to be debating it because that means there actually is some parity in the sport, and I think that that's necessary for the sport to grow. Because if the UFC isn't competing against anybody, we get cards almost like the one that we just got, pretty much. I'm not trying to hate on Holly Holm or Bueno Silva, but it's more just that the UFC, they put these cards together and then they market them the week of. You hear about it for like 2 days, and then you don't hear about someone like Mayra Bueno Silva again until she fights again, whether it be for the title against Juliana Pena or whoever they decide to match her up against. But it's like,
yeah, and still, all you get for the clips of the fights and stuff when there's a finish is just the very end. You don't even actually see the finish. It's
they're
just
getting a
like,
little better with that. I will say that. In the
okay,
past,
all
like
right,
they would never post any of them, but now, like, if you follow ESPN MMA, they'll post some of them.
okay,
For pay-per-views, I get it though, because like a pay-per-view, you want them to buy it, so it's. But I've noticed they started doing that for like the prelims and
but
just funny
yeah,
moments.
a fight card is, you know, a fight night card is meant to like, you know, I guess like even, but like I've said before, like, you know, a prelim card of a pay per view is like its own fight night. So like the fight night is a fight night card is meant to like indulge the, you know, like a casual viewer is like, you know, whether they even know a name or not, they like, you know, I guess maybe they're just they're hanging out with a friend or something that does you know a thing or two, and it's like, hey, like there's a meaningful main event tonight, like this could be, you know, we got nothing going on, let's just put it on. But
See,
you
the
know,
toughest part with this is this was a meaningful main event. It's just like nobody. I don't know. Like Holly Holm must really make that like get them viewers because the things that I see in like the Instagram comments are awful. But
the
people gotta be
Apex
watching.
too, you know, still having cards in the Apex, like
It's very
it's
bad.
not, yeah, it's really bad, yeah, man.
And like
It's
I want to
like,
stress, it really has nothing to do with the fighters. Like that win that Bueno Silva had was so impressive. I mean, that was a big upset. A lot of people thought Holly Holm was just gonna do what she does to people, but Bueno Silva got the standing guillotine in the second round, and she was doing well on the feet even in the first round with just the heavy punches that she was landing. I mean,
I
Holly Holm is
believe
very elusive, and in this fight, it was not the case.
I believe we are now on UFC Vegas 66
Oh, dude, we might be way past that. I'm gonna look it up.
or 70.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I usually just call them like by the names of like Fight Night Holm versus Bueno Silva
Yeah.
because it's just less confusing. But let's
But
find
like
out.
for
It's probably like
yeah,
70
in terms
something.
of like hashtags and stuff, they go by, you know, UFC Vegas and then the freaking number card that it is.
I'm about
It's
to
like wild.
Yeah, I mean when you see UFC at the Apex like 68 or I don't even know what number they're on. I'm about to find out. I'm literally looking it up as we speak. I promise.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's in the 60 to 70 range.
77.
Well, there you go.
That's
Wow.
so crazy. I mean, we've talked about it before. We have a whole video on it, pretty much.
They're gonna
just
get to
about the money.
100. UFC Vegas 100.
Oh, dude, well, we've said I don't think it's really gonna stop. And can you blame them? Like, it's so
No.
easy to make so much more money when you're not paying as much to put on the event.
It's just unfortunate. But like we were just talking about, it seems like that competition is growing more and more stronger. Like,
it is ramping up. And something you sent me a good video, and one of the main points in it that I think is worth bringing up is just like, yes, the UFC is by far the best. They make the most money, and I think that right now definitely they have a lot of the best fighters in each division, besides maybe like a couple, if that. But when you're putting on fight nights like this to attract fans, and then you can barely take out one highlight, and like we were talking before, the biggest highlights that I keep seeing are the one girl who hurt her elbow, and then Chelsea Chandler running from Norma Dumont. And I'm like, when the highlights of your fight night aren't the actual fight, like, and it's more just like little side things that have happened, that's not good. Like, people like us, they have us hook, line, and sinker. You know what I mean? Like, we can bitch and moan all we want, but we're gonna watch every week because we love the sport. But when I think about newer fans, I can't imagine somebody watching that card and being like, "This is awesome," and I want to keep watching this. I just can't, like, because there's barely any crowd energy. The main event was good, like, it was an important fight, but it wasn't. It just wasn't
but
really
you wouldn't
all
think
that.
so. You wouldn't think so.
Well, yeah, when you got like 30 people clapping like for an actual amazing finish. Like, I really don't want that to go unsaid. Like, Bueno Silva, you could argue that she just earned a title shot with that win. So it wasn't like this fight was meaningless.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But you should see the reaction. I don't know if it's because you run our Twitter and stuff. I only run like the Instagram. I don't know if it's the same, but on Instagram, when I see like a Holly Holm main event, I feel bad because she just gets shit on, and it's not even her fault. You know what I mean? That's why I said she must do numbers if they just keep putting her there. But it's almost like they're not that they're mailing it in, because these girls are great fighters. But when I see like half the fan base complaining about it, how good can it be doing? Like, you know what I'm saying? And usually around pay-per-view time, they still own the pay-per-views. They do a great job on those. But when's the last time you've had someone hit you up about a random fight night? You know what I mean? I used to have that happen a lot. Like, whether one of them, I'll bring this up, like the first ABC card or second ABC card, one of them was the Holloway Cater one. And like, I had a bunch of people hit me up about that because that was an awesome fight and it had a lot of good fighters on the card. Nowadays, with some of these ones at the Apex, you'd be lucky to have a couple good ones. And it just seemed like this event, just nothing seemed to go right. Like, with injuries, just random things happening. We talk about Jack Della Maddalena a lot. He had a pretty underwhelming fight, and people are blaming him for that. But this dude cut weight twice in like a few weeks, and he fought this guy on short notice. So it's not really his fault. I mean, I get that he took the fight, but at the end of the day, like, we've seen that dude look great in the cage. So I'm not going to hold like one shaky performance on short notice against him. But when things like this are the only things you could take away from the card, it's not very enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you think if Amanda Nunes was, not retired and obviously still a champion, like, I
think that'd be worse. That might be worse, because at least with this, you could say Bueno Silva just probably earned a title shot. Yeah. But if Nunes was champ, I don't know how far that would go, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know. I was kind of just thinking of it in like the sense that, a fresh challenger for Amanda Nunes.
I don't know. Like, would you feel confident picking Bueno Silva against Amanda Nunes? Because I really wouldn't.
No.
Especially, I mean, she was getting tagged on the feet by Holly Holm, and Holly didn't even look her best in this fight. Sadly for her, because she was right at a title shot's door. Like, I think if she won this fight, it would be her versus Pena, 100%.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
It's tough. I wish like it wasn't like we didn't have to talk about it like that, because it really does sound like we're shitting on the fighters, but I really don't think it's that. It's just I wish they were marketed in a way where more of like a mass audience would want to watch them fight every single time. Because like when I first got into this sport, dude, every single fight night was awesome. Maybe not every single one of them, because you're going to have your duds here and there. But name value-wise, there were a lot of great ones. And it got me into the sport easy because they're free fights. And you watch you watch people who you hadn't heard of before. Usually the fight nights are how they build people's names up. And that's still what they're doing. But back in the older days, they would market these guys so much better. But, we've talked about ESPN and just the machine that they have running. They just don't need to do that anymore. And, how they're making the fans feel should matter, but it probably doesn't to them when they're bringing in that much money. Like, I'm sure they have to put on great pay-per-views, obviously, because without them, you're going to probably start losing people. But like I said, I just think of just some random person who has never watched MMA before watching that fight.
Well, the only real thing you get from obviously the ESPN power is like you don't have to watch on cable. So, but like I'm also not 100% sure if you still have to sign. So on the ESPN.
You mean ESPN Plus?
Yeah.
ESPN. No, you have to sign up for that. That's the other thing. I think that's why they put so many cards like actually on ESPN and on ABC. But if you notice, there are certain ones that they don't put on there, and if you look at the quality of them, it makes a little bit of sense. It's just so tough. Like I think I want to end this in a positive way because I don't want to just like go negatively like about this whole thing. Let's talk a tiny bit about the main event. So Bueno Silva obviously defeated Holly Holm by submission. Do you think that this has earned her a title shot against Juliana Pena?
Yeah, I mean, like, for someone who's I don't think like they're gonna like because obviously now like okay like kind of by default Juliana Pena is their girl now.
I mean she has to get a title shot.
And I don't think they're gonna want to keep her like waiting and stuff.
No,
especially with how freaking in your face she is.
Someone compared her to Colby recently, and I was like, that's actually a pretty solid one. Like, I don't know if it's as much of a character. It probably is a little bit of a character because I know she's into like pro wrestling and stuff. I like Juliana Pena despite all this. Maybe like some of the stuff that she said has turned me off a little bit, but you got to get the fight one way or another. I think that's probably how she views it. But I think there'd be some heat behind this title fight as it gets closer. I think stylistically it's a great matchup. And the only question that I have, though, if they make this, and it's, bringing a little bit of Chael Sonnen into this, but where does Raquel Pennington fit into all this? Like, literally, she's like the unsung second contender, really. Like, because people, I think even we mentioned it. We said that we could see Pena versus Pennington being the next title fight. But Bueno Silva just defeated a legend and in phenomenal fashion. So I think that might leapfrog Pennington, to be honest with you. I think you probably agree considering about what you said. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. How do you feel about that title fight? Like, when you think of it?
I think it's... if I can at least respect the fight for happening in the sense, like, okay, like, it needs to happen, so get it done, like... Right. Whether or not it's like two people want to fight each other, so like just let them fight. But obviously,
great Chael quote, dude. Chael's the influence, man.
Well, yeah, like for instance, like okay, you have a vacant title now, so you gotta book a fight as soon as possible. So,
I don't mind it. I definitely don't mind it. I hope they don't make it like a full main event of a pay-per-view. I think it could be a good co-main. Because like I said, I think people aren't going to realize until the fight actually happens that this is going to be probably a pretty fun one. Because these girls both scrap. They're both really good on the ground. I think that their styles are going to like cancel each other out a little bit. And I think because of that, we might end up getting like a pretty good fight out of it. So, I don't know. I agree, though. I think that probably is the right next title fight at 135. I will say this, I do like that there's actually a title fight now where I'm like, I don't really know who's going to win. Because with Amanda Nunes, that was kind of the drawback of her. It's like, how many of these girls really have much of a chance? But now that she's gone, it's kind of similar to the John Jones stuff in a way. Because now the whole division opens up. Now we just got to hope that whoever becomes champion doesn't get injured. Obviously, they don't need double bad luck. Yeah. But I don't think that'll happen, But
yeah, who knows, man? Maybe it's just a curse, but...
Yeah, it's been rough luck for that division. You really are right. 205 now I'm talking about. But hopefully there's a big future at women's 135. I do hope that because Amanda Nunes has called it a career, that more of these girls are going to show up and we're going to get more great fights out of it. But only time will tell. I think that this card, we got a title fight out of it. That's good. But I don't know how many more of these Apex events like that they could put up like this that casual fans are really going to get into. Because like I said, they got us. But the casuals, I don't know if a casual fan would watch something like that and really be fully invested from there. Because I could tell you when I first got into MMA, it was never like watching a fight and then seeing like a random freak occurrence or a funny moment that made me get into it. It was the martial arts. So if you have an appreciation for that, you can have an appreciation for every fight, kind of like we do. But, we're talking about it, I think, more from a spectator's perspective rather than just like what me and you think as fans. Because I think me or you, if two guys or two girls are going to get in the cage and they put on a great fight, I don't care who they are. Like, it's going to be awesome. And I'm more than happy to become a fan of anybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So hopefully we do get Pena versus Bueno Silva for the vacant bantamweight title. I think it'll do a lot for the both of them, just like their careers and where they're at right now. So we'll see if that happens, but we'll be back next week.